Hi, I'm Giles Martin. I'm here in Abbey Road Studio 2. I was actually born in 1969 on John Lennon's birthday, which fascinated him. He said to my dad, "No, you're not sort of arsehole he's going to turn out to be." It's funny, growing up as a kid, having a father like George Martin, you can't compare it to anything else. I've never actually swapped dads with anyone. But we didn't necessarily, myself and my sister didn't necessarily grow up in a terribly musical house, apart from, as a kid, I noticed my dad played the piano a lot, and odd people would come back and forth. In fact, when I was a playgroup, they went around the class, and I was about 4 or 5, and they said, what do your parents do for a living? And they, my dad's an accountant, my dad's a lawyer, my dad's a truck driver, whatever. And I said, my dad just sits at home and plays the piano. And it turns out he was writing, I think he was writing the music for Live and Let Die, the film at the time. And there's huge embarrassment amongst my parents. They go, he's not employed, he's got a proper job. And so it wasn't a sort of thing. I think growing up I didn't necessarily grow up in a musical household. It wasn't, I had the privilege of meeting people like Paul McCartney at an early age and meeting, the Beatles at an early age, but they were just friends of my parents. It didn't mean a whole lot to me as a kid. I remember when I became interested in the guitar and became interested in songwriting, Paul did say to me, he was incredibly encouraging. He goes, "That's great, I find it difficult to write songs, and I'm Paul McCartney." So I did have a privileged sort of background as far as that goes. My parents were always very wary of me getting a proper job. I learned to play the guitar, as some people might be able to see, quite badly. But behind my parents' back, it was a thing, don't join the music industry. I'm delighted I did. In fact, I really got involved in music because my dad started to lose his hearing when I was about 16, and he needed a second pair of ears, and he didn't really want to tell people he was losing his hearing, so I became his ears to a certain extent. I'd come in and try and help him. Through that, I would learn off him, and we started working together. And it was actually a great thing because I was needed to a certain extent by him, which is nice as a son and a father working together. At the same time, he was always very good. He never had a sort of "that's my boy" kind of attitude. He was always very receptive to my ideas. And in fact, he's been receptive to people's ideas throughout the whole of his career. And he treated me no differently and was always open to my suggestions, however wrong they may be. And God knows I made lots of wrong ones. So it gave me a chance to learn, and gave me a chance to respect him for what he does and what he's done. I never I was never any good at learning songs off by heart. I mean, I bluffed my way through most things. I've never been terribly accurate at playing anything. I can play a number of things very badly, but I was much more interested in playing for a reason. So as soon as I learned to play the guitar with a friend of mine, we started playing in the underground here, started playing in tube stations. Playing whatever songs we could learn, basically, as you do. And my dad was especially distraught by this. He didn't want, George Martin's son being arrested because it's illegal. At that stage, it was illegal to busk. In fact, the way we played it should have been illegal, but it was illegal to busk. And I then got into playing bands. I formed a band, as you do, and I had a great time. I think playing in a band, learning to play an instrument, learning to play a guitar was the best thing I ever did. And not that I practice the guitar or play it very often now, but it opens so many doors as far as if you're willing to play it to people, if you're willing to bore people with it. It's great, to meet people and chat. It's like a great hobby to have. It's better than video games, for instance. And I think that being in a band taught me more about recording and music, fun enough, than being the son of George Martin did. Because if you're the son of someone, people expect you have this knowledge, which generally you don't have. People think you grew up in recording studios. Of course, I'd spent more time in studios than probably other people are 16, but it's still just a row of buttons. If you're 16, it's still just, a compressor. Of course, I know what a compressor does. I hadn't got a clue for a long time because people expect you to know these things. But if you're in a band, especially as I was in an unsuccessful band, you have a chance to make a whole lot of mistakes and learn stuff. And the hardest thing, not that it's a bad thing, but the hardest thing if you're a son of someone famous or a child of a famous person is you don't get that many chances to make mistakes before people go. People are hoping for the second coming. People are going, he's going to be just like his dad. And if you screw up, you're then the other way. He couldn't get a proper job. And so being in a sort of hidden band gave me a chance to learn. And that's what, music is about evolving. It's about discovering new stuff. It's about learning new songs. It's about learning how things work. It's not about playing the same old things every day, then things become boring. After playing in a band, I carried on playing I always played with people, always like going on tour and playing in pubs and clubs. So I thought it was just great fun. And I started writing jingles, I started writing commercials. I started doing gasoline adverts. That was for France. French gasoline was the peak of my life. And that was when I was at university. And then when I left university, I wanted to become a record producer. I wanted to write music for people and produce people, but I couldn't. I didn't have any, what do? You can't go, I'm the son of George Martin, let me produce you, or give me a job. And so I ended up working in press. And at the same time, I started looking at bands. And funny enough, my dad was he was nervous, I think, of me following in his footsteps at this stage. And I saw a band called My Life Story. They're playing My Life Story. They're playing at the Astoria in London. And I went to go see them play, and I thought they were good. And they had a whole lot of strings, and I did an arrangement of them and produced them. And they released a single that became sort of #1 in Melody Maker and Enemy and the Cool magazines. And someone showed it to my dad and said, look what your son's been up to. And I was just doing it in the evenings, as you do if you're a fan of music and you want to get into music. And that kind of opened doors for me. I left the press job and became a producer. Production engineering is something that you learn stuff all the time with, like any sort of music. I mean, I think for me, starting out and how I am now, if I can work in any form of music, I'm happy. It doesn't matter. It's just, I think I produce more stuff now and remix and mix stuff now, probably because in a way it's what people expect of me, and maybe I'm okay at it. The Love project came from the fact that they needed to do a show. It was George Harrison and Guy Liberté, who's the head of Cirque du Soleil, were friends. And they decided to do a show, and they decided they couldn't have anyone singing Beatles songs a la Mamma Mia. They didn't want, a chorus singing Hey Jude on stage. And I think that's the right decision. And so they approached my dad, and I'd just had quite a lot of success in the UK doing classical stuff at the time. And Apple came to see me, and I sat with my dad and talked to them about it. And I said to them, I could try creating a gig that never happened. And Neil Aspinall, who was the head of Apple, said, I'd love, we talked about, because he was their roadie, we talked about their shows. We talked about, starting off with Long Tall Sally and finishing with Twist and Shout, or, creating the thing. And I said, well, listen, with Pro Tools and digital stuff, I can perhaps create a gig that never happened. So, under complete secrecy, I went upstairs here into a very small room and took some material, and I took at the beginning, the drums from the end, and Get Back, because I realized they're the same tempo, and because I thought I'd start a gig, never happened, with a drum solo going into a song, and started moving things around, and people said mashing up. I always thought it was a bit rude. And then thought, how am I going to start this? And got the piano from A Day in the Life and turned that backwards, because I thought if that makes a good ending, it'll make a good beginning as it sucks into the chord from Hard Day's Night. I just had fun, And my view was, if I can impress my dad doing Beatles stuff, then that's pretty good. As a son, you're always trying to impress your dad, I think, or compete in some way. And it just so happened that it was on Beatles stuff, and I was auditioning for the Beatles. And I really thought that they probably wouldn't like it. I really thought people would think this is a really bad idea. It sounds like a bad idea if you just talk about it. And I then took Within You, Without You and Tomorrow Never Knows and stuck those together, because I thought this will definitely get me fired, if nothing else. And they came and they really liked it. They liked the ideas. And so I ended up becoming the sort of legacy which I kind of fought against for a long time. And here I am now in Abbey Road talking about it. Suddenly became part of it, and I backed up all the catalogue onto Pro Tools and started working on this project, which became Love. I came with my dog Stan and went to my room and started working. We had a list. I worked with the director of the show and my dad. My dad would come in 2 days a week, and I'd play him ideas and we'd work through stuff. So he was kind of producing me doing it. But the bosses were the Beatles, Ringo and Paul, and Olivia Harrison and Yoko Ono, who were representing George and John. And it was important that they liked everything. They had to hear everything before it was passed on anywhere else. And the interesting thing about the Beatles, it's such a protected circle, rightfully so, that if you do something and no one likes it, no one ever hears it. You know, and that's actually quite a good thing for me, because it means I could take risks. You know, occasionally people at Abbey Road were sort of, you know, people who hadn't heard anything, which the majority of people here, didn't like the idea of what we were doing, and didn't like the idea of me coming in and changing. People think it's changing history, but it's not, because I'm not deleting anything. I wasn't, you know, I was just really trying to do something different. And Ringo and Paul would come in. The funny thing is they come and listen to stuff, and they're not allowed to take stuff away either. It's not like you give them a CD. The only chance of them listening to the new mixes we were doing was by coming here and listening to them. And then later, as we got the technology sorted out and secure drives were done, I would go and see Yoko and sit down with her and work through stuff. And it's fascinating. For me, it was fascinating because I have no past with them. You know, I certainly wasn't there at the time. And so it's kind of on an even, I'm way down the pecking order, but it's kind of, I meet on an even keel, as it were. There's no history. I have no, you know, experience of anything they did. So it was quite easy for me just to go, do you like it, or what don't you like about it? And they were very proactive in it, all four of them, you know, the two wives and Ringo and Paul. You know, Paul was the one that would give me the fear, because he's such a good musician. I mean, Ringo's a pretty good musician as well, and they'd you know, they know their stuff and they know their own material. And occasionally, in fact, when we were doing the show, I sat down with Paul and I went through each bit and, you know, played in bits in the theatre, and it was great. It was a great evening. And he goes, you know, he said to me, you know, I'd have to say I really like what you've done, and what you've done has been sympathetic with my music, and I really appreciate that. For me, that was just, you know, the best. But when it came to the opening of the show, at the very beginning, when people walk into the theatre and they're sitting down, I couldn't work out because they wanted Beatles music to play, and someone said, well, why don't you just do another 60 minutes of, and I mean, it took me 2 years to do the 90 minutes. So I decided to get as many Beatles on as I could by taking the vocals off, which is difficult with Beatles stuff because there's so much leakage on the tracks, and just play the backing tracks. So it's like the Beatles are playing, they're backing as you walk in. So you have Dear Prudence with no vocal, you know, you have Should Have Known Better with no vocal, and Penny Lane with no vocal. And the idea was that it would counterpoint Because. When Because starts, it's just vocals. So I'm sitting with Paul, and my dad's there and Paul's there, and Penny Lane's playing in the ceiling of the theatre. And Paul goes, and what's this then? And I went, it's Penny Lane. He goes, I know it's bloody Penny Lane, but what's it doing in the ceiling? And I said, well, I just thought it'd be an idea to, you know, because they listened to everything. I thought it'd be an idea to maybe put the backing tracks up there. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, I'll have a listen. And it's right there, because it is their music. And, you know, and my dad sometimes, you know, he feels embarrassed because it's not his music, and it certainly isn't mine. It is theirs. There were 4 Beatles, and it was their band, and that was it. There's no 5th Beatle. With music, there's things you'd like to do. I wish I could play things better. You know, I've always thought, you know, it'd be great to really learn how to play the bass properly, or guitar properly, or piano properly. You know, but it's just a question of time. Maybe I'll start watching our video tunes and then become a better musician. But you know, I'd like to, you know, work with, you know, a really good young band. At the same time, I'd love to go and do something like the Love Project with something else, you know, with taking stuff and creating, make people listen to music again. The good thing about Love is people do analyze it, people do listen, and people don't have it on the background, they do actually get into it. And that's why we do music. We do music because we're passionate about it. And so, really, I mean, I'm about to write a television thing, you know, it's a question of writing, producing, and being creative. And anything that lets you do that, you take. And every day, I just can't believe I can do this for a living. You know, I was told by my parents for years it's an impossible job to do for a living, despite coming from my background, because I think maybe when I have kids, I'll be doing the same thing. You know, don't go into music. You know, but you do it because you love it, and if you can get paid for it, it means you don't have to do another job to get in the way as well. So it's fantastic. I would say to anyone learning an instrument, anyone, you know, struggling, because let's face it, we all struggle with instruments all the time, and we struggle with music. is that no matter how hard it is, it's hard for everyone. And that love that you have for it, never let go of it, because you might be trying to learn a song and go, I'm never going to learn this. But the fact of it is, you do learn, and you do move on. And the thing to do is never ever give up, never ever lose that drive and that feeling you get when you work something out or you hear some great music, because it's much better than sitting down and watching the telly. I mean, the thing about music is that I think if anyone's toured, I used to tour a lot. You end up kind of working on automatic pilot, and you start amusing yourself with stuff. I was playing bass in a band, and you start playing the same things over and over again. And I was once in Germany, and I used to jump off the stage, and I jumped off the stage, and I had no idea until I left the how far I was jumping. We played the end of the concert, and I jumped off the stage, and there was no crowd there. I mean, let's face it, we weren't that popular, but there was a break before the people. And I launched off the stage, and seeing the band's faces, and they looked at me, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die in a shit club in Germany. And I dropped about 12 feet. My bass amp almost followed me, because I didn't have wireless or anything. The bass, it was like Wile E. Coyote. My lead unraveled. It was the only thing that kept me alive. And an Ampeg SV200 or they came crashing down afterwards. But yeah, I spent most of my time being laughed at by people. I think it's important. I think it's important in studios to have a good laugh. It's funny, I mean, it's the Beatles. It's one thing that was shocking for me from listening to all of the tapes, everything they did, was not how serious it was. It was how much kind of fun there is in the tapes. Even when you think, oh, the White Album they didn't get on, they're really cracking up most of the time. And it's kind of, you forget that actually they came to the studio to have a good time, and all the other stuff you read about happened in offices and accountants and all that sort of stuff. Most of the studio stuff is great. And that's the thing about music. Music should be fun. If you're learning music, have a laugh with it, and don't sit on your own and do it. Find someone to play with, because the great thing about music is there's always someone worse than you. I mean, in my case, you really have to hunt them out, but there is, and so show off to someone. Well, the great thing about the internet is the fact you can delve into the world of songs and work out chords. And one of the problems I struggle from is you look on the internet, and quite often the chord sheets are wrong. There's some guy going, if you know the right way this song goes, please write in. You think, oh, that's no good. I can work that out. And the great thing about iVideo tunes is it breaks down that barrier, and you're suddenly being taught by professionals. You're suddenly being taught in a simple way by professionals. It's kind of inspired me. I saw iVideo tunes before I got involved in it, and it's inspired me to going, right, I'm going to see if I can learn the piano better now. And I think that's a great thing. People don't have access to the best people in the world, and now with iVideo tunes they do. You can be taught by some of the best people, from home, and the way it's shot and the way it's done is very simple. If I can understand it, it's very simple. So I think it's a great thing. It's a great learning tool for people, and I think hopefully it'll create great musicians in the future. Hi, this is Giles Martin here at Abbey Road Studio 2, talking about Blackbird. Blackbird was recorded for the White Album on Tuesday the 11th of June 1968 in this room here, big room for one man. It's funny actually, during the White Album period, the Beatles were all working on different projects at the same time. Actually, when Paul was doing this in this room, across the corridor in Studio 3, John was doing Revolution No. 1. And they worked like this for the whole of the White Album. Chris Thomas became my father's assistant, who's a very great producer. He's produced everything from the Sex Pistols, the Pretenders now, and they worked in pockets. And Blackbird comes about from, it's obviously, it's Martin, it's Paul playing on his acoustic guitar. in a classic finger-picking style that they'd been competing on, really. I mean, Paul had been playing this sort of, if you listen to Michel, actually, fun enough, he started playing this, and yesterday he started combining bass notes with his strums on quite an early time. And Blackbird moves on to the sort of plucking that was going on. And if you think about the White Album, it has I Will, Blackbird, Julia is a good example, Dear Prudence again. In fact, Dear Prudence and Julia are the same, exactly the same finger style. So it was a gradation of this folk music that was booming in London at the time in Tin Pan Alley. And Blackbird, the style of it came from that. The song was inspired by Paul being woken up by a blackbird one morning. He's always said the awakening that he had goes on from the awakening of the civil rights movement, the changing of the way black people were treated at the time. It's funny, because in England, slang for a woman is bird. And he's always said, it's blackbird. You know, it's not a good slang word, but it's really, he wrote the song about civil rights, and it's a beautiful song. It was recorded very simply. He did a number of takes. It took him about 4 hours from start to finish in here. And the way it was done onto 4-track, and with mics on his voice, on his guitar, on his foot tap, that happens. And there's discussions whether this is a metronome sound or the tapping of his foot. My father's always said, on the tape box, it does say foot tap. So that's what they mic'd up. They mic'd up his foot tapping away as he's playing the song. Part of the metronome, he's singing. And then, funnily enough, again, a classic Beatles technique, halfway through, in the chorus going through the instrumental to the end, there's a double tracking vocal and double tracking guitar. So what he did is he got the take down that he wanted. He then played the whole thing again and sang it on top of his voice, probably using his foot tap as a metronome, probably using a manual click, because of course there's no clicks in the Beatles. They recorded pre-click, as it were. So Blackbird was done. And it's funny, Jeff Emmerich in his book wrote that it was done outside in the garden, and that's why the sound of the birds were happening. But I think his memory's been slightly distorted, because it definitely was done in here. And then the sound effects library, the BBC, which was used on lots of Beatles stuff, from Sgt. Pepper to, all sorts of bits and pieces to Being in the Bed for Mr. Kite, was raided. And when they mixed it down, it's not on the actual 4-track master, but when they mixed it down, you have the sound of blackbirds coming in, especially at the end of the instrumental. And at the very end of the song, you think of him being on his own, working on this song, playing this song. And as he finished the chord, this voice chirps up, an American voice says, it's great the way you just speak it in the chorus. And I think it must be Linda. I think Linda was around at that time, and she was obviously in the studio with him when he was working on it. And that's the story of Blackbird. With Blackbird, it's interesting, because you wonder how someone could write a song like that. You wonder where it comes from, I think he must have had the guitar idea. He must have a guitar idea, and he moved the vocal around it. But one thing that's very, very McCartney about it is the fact the bass line always moves. The bass line will ascend as a counter melody goes down. And when you're playing it, it's a cool thing to play, because when you're playing it, it will, it's that thing, you forget that it's actually a song, you think it's a guitar piece. And that in itself, it's no mean feat to come up with a very good song, a very sort of memorable song, which is actually an instrumental in its own right. And one of the things actually I was asked to do for, or we thought of doing actually for the Love album, was to create an instrumental of Blackbird. And someone said it'd be great to have just the guitar going on. And of course it's impossible, because he's singing. And I did manage to, I think, made up about a minute of bits where he wasn't singing, and I used a much shorter version to begin yesterday, just so it'd be a segue for Paul's guitar playing.
Here's the tuning for Blackbird. It's standard tuning, but just a little flat. Here's the first string. second string. Third string. Fourth string. Fifth string. And sixth string. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. This is Blackbird, as played by Paul McCartney on the Beatles' White Album. McCartney stated in interviews that Blackbird grew out of a classical composition that he knew as a kid, something that was very simple to play but actually sounded very impressive. And I believe that's what we have here with Blackbird, is something very, very simple to play. But since it's so well crafted, it comes off as being sounding very difficult to play. When in fact, most of the chords that we'll be using only have two notes, and we'll be keeping the G ringing out throughout. So let's take a look at the two basic patterns that we'll be using throughout Blackbird, and we'll just be plugging each of the chords that we do into these patterns. So we'll start out with the first thing that we hear in the song, which is this. So I start out with my third finger here on the 6th string, 3rd fret. And with my thumb, I'm going to pluck the 6th string. And with my middle finger, I'm going to grab the 2nd string open. It's important to note that my middle finger is assigned to the 2nd string for the entirety of the song. My index finger is going to be assigned to the 3rd string for the entire song. And then my ring finger is going to be assigned to the 1st string for the whole song. So for right now, we're going to pluck again the 6th string and the 2nd string, the thumb and our middle finger respectively. And then in this 8th note pattern, you're going to hit the 3rd string open. The next chord we're going to be going to is an implied A minor. You're going to put your first finger here on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and then your thumb is going to grab the open on the 5th string. And again, your middle finger's picking that 2nd string. Your index finger is going to grab the open. So let's do that G and then that A minor at one after the other. Next, we have G over B. Your first finger is going to go here on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and your third finger is going to go on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. So you're going to use your thumb to pluck the 5th string, and your middle finger again assigned to the 2nd string. Pluck those two together. And then immediately afterwards, we're going to do open on the G string with our index finger. So let's do G to A minor to B. Now we're going to go all the way up so that our first finger is on the 10th fret of the 5th string, and our third finger is on the 12th fret of the 2nd string. You can use either your third or your pinky. And this is a G major chord. When you have your first finger here on the 5th string, and your third finger is on the 2nd string up 2 frets, this is a major shape. So when you're doing these major shapes, you can use either your third finger or your pinky on the 2nd string. So now let's hear the 16th note roll that we're going to be doing. So start by plucking both the 5th and the 2nd string at the same time. Then I hit the 3rd string. And then with my 2nd finger, I'm going to pluck both the 2nd and the 3rd string at the same time. then the fifth string again, then open on the third string, and then with my second finger, my middle finger, I'm going to pluck the second and the third string again together. So I'll play that for you slowly. And this pattern is the pattern done throughout the song anytime he hangs out on a chord for longer than one beat. I'll play it for you one more time slowly. So let's do that walk. G major, A minor,
G over B.
and then we'll come up to this G major chord here at the 10th fret, and we'll do that pattern twice. I'll play it for you slowly. One more time. Let's check out the walk up next.
Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life.
So after we do that intro walk up twice, you do it the first time and then you do it again, and that's when the vocal comes in. And then we have this walk up and walk down. I'll play it for you one time. So we start out here with our first finger here on the 3rd fret of the 5th string, our pinky or 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string, and that's C major. And again, we're just going to do the one-time 8th note pattern where we pluck both the 5th and the 2nd string with our thumb and our middle finger respectively, and then with your index finger get the 3rd string open. Now we're going to walk up and we're going to put our 2nd finger here on the 4th fret of the 5th string, and then you bring your 1st finger down to the 3rd fret of the 1st string. And you're going to pluck the 5th string with your thumb again, but this time try using your ring finger here on the 1st string. And then hit the 3rd string open. Next up, our 1st finger is going to go on the 5th fret of the 5th string. 3rd finger or pinky here on the 7th fret of the 2nd string. Pluck both of those together, and this time we'll be using our thumb and our middle finger again. And then the 3rd string open. 2nd finger down here on the 6th fret of the 5th string, and our 1st finger is going to go down to the 5th fret of the 1st string. And you want to use your thumb and your ring finger if you can. And then just hit the 3rd string open. So let's do that walk up slowly. When you're doing this walk up, it's important to get your 2nd finger in position first, and you can use that as a pivot to bring your 1st finger all the way down to the 1st string. It's real easy to find that note where your 2nd finger goes, because it's just one fret up from where your 1st finger was previously at on the same string. And now we're going to do an E minor shape. Your 1st finger is at the 7th fret of the 5th string, and your 3rd or 2nd finger will go to the 8th fret of the 2nd string. And then here we're going to do that 16th note roll. So pluck both the 5th and the 2nd string at the same time. Then the 3rd string, open. Then with your 2nd finger, pluck the 2nd string and the 3rd string at the same time. Then the 5th string with your thumb, 3rd string with your index, and then again the 2nd and 3rd strings together with your 2nd finger, middle finger. And that's the same exact pattern we'll be using throughout the rest of the song. We're just going to plug in different chords. As a matter of fact, we're going to plug in another chord here now, E flat major. So slide your first finger back and either place or keep your third finger here at the 8th fret of the 2nd string. This is now E flat major, and we'll do that same 16th note roll. So E minor, E flat. Then take the whole shape and bring it down 1 fret so that your first finger's at the 5th fret of the 5th string and your third finger's at the 7th fret of the 2nd string. And do it 1 time. Just the 2 notes you're fretting and the 3rd string open. Next we're going to go back to this shape. Your 2nd finger here on the 4th fret of the 5th string and your first finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Pluck both those notes you're fretting and then the 3rd string open. And then we're going to go back to a C shape. First finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string and your 3rd or your pinky here at the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And we're going to do the 16th note roll there. Now we're going to change this C major to C minor. Put your 3rd finger or your 2nd finger onto the 4th fret of the 2nd string, but keep your first finger at the 3rd fret of the 5th string and do that 16th note roll. Take this minor shape, slide it down 1 fret so that your first finger is at the 2nd fret of the 5th string, or your 3rd or your 2nd finger is at the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Do the 16th note roll there. G over B. Now bring your 2nd finger so that it's down here at the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. And now we're going to be using the open 5th string as our bass note here. And do that 16th note roll again. And that's A7. Now put your first finger here on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And our bass note's now going to change to the 4th string open D. And this chord is a G suspended, with the D as the bass. And then bring your 3rd finger or your 2nd finger up to the 3rd fret of the 6th string. And now that's your bass note. And we're going to pluck that and the 2nd string open, and we're going to do that 16th note roll on this G. So now that we've reviewed the walk-up, let's play it slowly. So after you play that walk up and walk all the way back down the first time, you do a turnaround that shows up here at the beginning of the song and then shows up at the end of the song. So let's listen to that turnaround. So we come back to this C major. Put your first finger here at the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and your pinky, your 3rd finger at the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Do that 8th note pattern of just plucking the notes you're fretting and then hitting the 3rd string open. Slide your first finger down to the 2nd fret of the 5th string and put your 3rd finger at the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Pluck that just 1 time. And then the open on the 3rd string. And now we're going to come to the A7 chord. Put your 2nd finger here on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. And then we're going to do the 16th note roll. Your first finger is going to go on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and our bass is now going to change to the 4th string, the D. So do the 16th note roll with that in mind. And then bring your 3rd finger up to the 3rd fret, or your 2nd finger, to the 3rd fret of the 6th string. And we'll do the 16th note roll with this 6th string as our bass now. So let's hear that turn. So far, we do that intro section twice. And then on the second time, the vocal comes in. Now we're going to do the walk up and walk back down. And then here's where we do that first turnaround. Immediately after that, we come back to the intro section, which we do one time. And then instead of doing it twice like we did at the beginning, we just do it once, and then we go straight to the walk up. And here, the second time through that walk up and walk down, instead of doing the turn, the song changes keys, changes to the key of F major, and it does the bridge, which we'll learn next.
Blackbird fly, blackbird fly.
Before we take a look at the bridge, let's review all the parts in the arrangement up to this point. We have the intro walk up twice, once by itself, then the vocal kicks in, next we do the walk up and walk back down. And then we do that first turnaround that we learned. Do the very first walk up again just once, because we have a vocal right away. Walk up and walk back down again. And that brings us to the bridge. The rest of the song that we've learned so far has been in the key of G major. And the bridge switches to the key of F major, and that gives us some new chords. We'll have F major, D minor, and B flat major. So let's listen to the bridge section as we'll learn it. So start out with your first finger here at the 8th fret of the 5th string, and your third or your pinky at the 10th fret of the 2nd string. And that's F major. Pluck both the notes that you're fretting, and then hit the 3rd string open. Come down so that your first finger is at the 7th fret of the 5th string, and your third finger or second finger is at the 8th fret of the 2nd string. And this is E minor. So pluck both notes and then hit the 3rd string open. Slide this shape, this exact shape, same shape down to so that your first finger is at the 5th fret of the 5th string, and your third or your second finger is at the 6th fret of the 2nd string, and that's D minor. Again, pluck both notes you're fretting and then hit the 3rd string open. Next, we're going to go to C major. Add your first finger to the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and either your third or your pinky to the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Pluck both notes that you're fretting, and then hit the 3rd string open. Now we're going to come down to a B flat major, and we're going to do that 16th note pattern. Your first finger goes on the first fret of the 5th string, and either your third or your pinky goes on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And we'll do that 16th note pattern. So again, you pluck both of the notes as you're fretting, hit the open 3rd string, and then with your second finger hit the 2nd and 3rd string together. Then just the 5th string, open 3rd string, and then with your middle finger again, your the 3rd and the 2nd string together. So let's hear that. And then slide back up to C major. First finger at the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and either pinky or 3rd finger at the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Come back to F and do that same exact walk down. F, E minor, D minor, C. Then at B flat, do that 16th note pattern. But this time, instead of changing to C, we're going to go to A7. So add your 3rd finger to the 2nd fret of the 2nd string, and now the 5th string open is going to be our bass. Your first finger is now going to go to the 1st fret of the 2nd string. Bring your bass note down to the 4th string open and do that roll. So let's hear that slowly. B flat to C, do the walk down again, E minor, D minor, C, B flat, A7. And then we're going to do the very intro walk up that we did, the G, A minor, G over B. And then the first time through, we're going to do the same roll we've done throughout. And then you're going to vary it up just a little bit. So listen again. And all I'm doing is just taking my, after I do the initial roll the same way I've always done it, I'm taking my thumb, index, and middle finger and plucking the 5th, the 3rd, and the 2nd strings respectively 3 times. All at once. Let's listen to that. Then we're going to do the walk up again. And then you do the bridge part again. Start back at F, E minor, D minor, C major, B flat, walk up to C. Second time, go to A7. Now we're going to walk up and we're going to do the very same intro section that we did, but we're going to add a little bit of a variation at the end. Let's give it a listen. So do the same walk up that you did at the very front of the song. And the first time you're going to do the same 16th note pattern. The second time we're going to change it. So pluck the 5th and the 2nd string together, and then pluck the 2nd string by itself, and then 5th string, then 3rd string, and then 2nd and 3rd together. Let's listen to that. And then the next two rolls are going to be the same 16th note rolls that we've done. So let's hear that. The same. Then we have. Then the same twice in a row. And then it ends just alternating between hitting the 5th and the 2nd and the open on the 3rd string. Let's hear that again. So let's hear it. After that, the song pauses. You hear some bird sounds in the background, and then we'll come back and wrap up the song.
You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
So towards the end of the song, McCartney pauses. You hear some birds singing in the background, and then he does his final variation on the turn before we finish out the tune. Let's give it a listen. So when we left off, we were at this high G with our first finger at the 10th fret of the 5th string, pinky or third finger at the 12th fret of the 2nd string. You're going to pluck both of those and just kind of slide out of it. And then you're going to come back to G, third finger at the 3rd fret of the 6th string. You do that just one time and then the open, plucking the 6th string and the 2nd string open, and then the 3rd string open immediately after that. Come to A minor, first finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and your 5th string open is your bass note. Pluck those two, and then the 3rd string open. G over B. First finger is at the 2nd fret of the 5th string. Third finger is at the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Pluck those two notes together, and then the open on the 3rd string. Come up to C major. First finger at the 3rd fret of the 5th string. Pinky at the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Pluck those two together, and then the 3rd string open. G over B. Pluck those two together, and then the 3rd string open. Now we're going to go to A7, so 3rd finger or 2nd finger at the 2nd fret of the 2nd string, and the 5th string open is our bass note. Pluck those two notes together, then the 3rd string open. And now our first finger is going to go onto the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and the 4th string open is going to be our bass note. And we're going to do our 16th note roll that we've done throughout the song. So let's listen to that. Slide out of that high G. Then you're going to go back to the A section, the very front section. Do the walk up again. And walk back down. Now we're going to do the very first turnaround that we looked at and that we learned again. And then we're going to start out again doing that same turnaround, but we're going to abbreviate it this time. When we get to that last G chord, we're just going to strum. We're just going to finger it, and now we're going to add our 3rd finger or our pinky to the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Pluck the 6th and the 2nd together. And then we're going to get the 6th, the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st all together. So let's hear that. We'll do the turnaround. Congratulations, you've made it through Blackbird. This is the performance of Blackbird.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise.